Good morning. Good morning. My name is Reverend Krista Taves, Minister of Congregational Life, and along with the Reverend Dr. Doug Watkins, we welcome all of you here in this sanctuary or watching from home to Eliot Chapel, a liberal religious congregation of spiritual seekers centered in our deepest conviction that there is a love beyond our understanding that grounds us in a profoundly interconnected world where we seek to live with integrity and serve with courage and compassion. If you're visiting us for the first time, we're so glad that you've come. I hope that this service speaks to you and that you are warmly welcomed by the good people here. You should have received a guest form on your way in. Please fill it out on both sides if you have kids and leave it in the offertory plate. This will help us stay in touch. And if you didn't get one, there are those at both entrances to this sanctuary. If you're visiting online, please let us know you're here by emailing welcome@eliotchapel.org so that we can also personally welcome you today. We have 2 coffee hours. Here at Eliot, please join us for coffee hour in Adams Hall. Grab a blue mug if you want people to talk to you so that our members and friends will be sure to welcome you. We also have a Zoom coffee hour at noon. Just sign up for our communications and you'll get a link to join. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we light a chalice to symbolize that we are entering sacred space and preparing our hearts and minds for the giving and receiving of blessed community that happens whenever we gather. Out of depths unknown, the spark of life ignites and we are born. We enter a world, a universe, not of our making. Our lives unfold in mystery and wonder for which there are no definitive answers. And so we gather in community to seek in one another assurance and recognition, compassion and strength. We gather in community to be reminded of what is most ultimate and what is most sacred. In this spirit of searching and of reverence, let us worship together this morning. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn, number 126, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing.
Sing
As Unitarian Universalists, we are a people of covenant. We are a pluralist faith tradition, so we have many and varying understandings of the divine and what lies beyond us. So what we do center on are the promises that we have made to each other, the sacred promises that we call covenants. And every Sunday we read our congregational covenant to remind us of who we are and who we want to be with each other. Please join me with the words printed in your order of service. As a free congregation, we promise to one another our mutual trust and support. To create beloved community, we promise to be kinder to each other than we have to be. To listen fully to each other with an open mind and heart. To speak responsibly and respectfully, to find ways to improve our church for all members and friends.
So this morning, for our Time for All Ages, we will draw from the Islamic tradition, and specifically a wisdom story from the Sufi tradition. A famous Sufi mystic, Rabia, was searching for something on the street outside of her small hut. The sun was setting, and darkness was descending, and a few people gathered around her. "What have you lost? What are you searching for? Perhaps we can help," they said to Rabia. And Rabia said,
"I've lost my needle."
One amongst the people, not a very nice person, said, "Well, the setting sun will now make it difficult for you to find the needle. Where has it fallen? That will help us narrow down the area of the big road. If we know the exact place, it will be easier to find it."
It is better not to ask me that question, because actually it has not fallen on the road at all. It has fallen inside my house.
Well, everyone started giggling because they thought she was joking. And then that same person, a skeptic, said out loud, "We have always known that you are a little bit insane. If the needle has fallen inside the house, then why are you searching for it on the road?"
For a very simple reason. Inside the house, there is no light. And on the outside, a little light is still there.
The people laughed and they started dispersing, but Rabia called for them to wait, and she said,
"Listen, that's exactly what you are doing. I was just following your example. You go on seeking bliss in the outside world without asking the most fundamental question: where have I lost it?"
After a pause, Rabia continued,
You have lost it inside, and yet you are looking for it on the outside for the very same reason. Your senses are outward bound. Your ears hear sounds on the outside. Your hands touch things on the outside. That's the reason why you are searching outside. But the day I searched for a very long time, I was also just searching on the outside. But the day I searched inwards, I was surprised. That is where I lost it, and that is the only place it can be found.
So this very old story points out something that we will explore in our service today. This month we are exploring the idea of wonder, the things that connect us deeply with the good. And ancient wisdom reminds us that while often it is tempting to look for that around us, the only way that we can recognize it is to first begin inside and be ready for it. So, as we move into the rest of our time together, I invite us all to let in a spirit of wonder as we explore. So we invite those of you who are going to religious education to go to your classes, and we will sing you out with "From You I Receive."
From you I receive.
This past week held a moment of great sadness. Kevin Johnson, a Meacham Park teenager who in 2005 murdered a police officer, was executed by the state of Missouri. Despite many attempts to reduce his sentence to life in prison, including an investigation confirming that racism had tainted his trial and his sentencing. This touches us as Unitarian Universalists in many ways. We have a deep valuing of bodily autonomy. It is sacred, and many of us ground our opposition to the death penalty in this value. We also have a centuries-old commitment to justice, equity, and compassion in all our relations. As a beloved community, Eliot Chapel has a long-standing relationship with Meacham Park. Our communities have a deep love and respect for each other. On Tuesday night, 3 of us attended the vigil at Meacham Memorial Park. The park was filled with those who love him and his family, gathered to be there for Kevin and for each other. At the end of the service, the Lord's Prayer was sung. Some of you may still know this prayer by heart, with the final words, "For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever." Drops of rain began to fall, gently, like an embrace from out of the mystery of the dark sky and the God that so many offered their sorrow, anger, and heartbreak to that night. Let us have a moment of silence for all who await behind bars for their last day, for their families and communities, for those who have been harmed, and for those who hunger for restoration, and for the mystery of life and death that no state can control or own.
We continue in a spirit of prayer and meditation. O Spirit that moves in all things, great mystery, whose reach spans the cold, distant edges of the universe and yet is present within the vast subatomic emptiness, coursing through every fiber and every breath of our being, through being itself. May we see the miracle of all that is, the miracle of all that is part of our life, this planet, this universe. The crystal star, the shape-shifting clouds, the patient trees. May we see each other, all these things, through fresh eyes, for it is easy to forget how miraculous they truly are, that we truly are, and to remember gratitude for what we've been given. As we move through our lives, let us remember to see the mundane to be a miracle beneath, to perceive common substance that gives birth to our myriad forms, that mystery that spans beyond the edges of the universe and infuses our next breath. May this foundational awareness guide us on our paths. For a moment, I invite you to think about what you bring this morning to our time together. If there are people on your hearts or in your mind right now, I invite you in this quiet to speak their names out loud. We hold each of those names and those names that remain quietly held within our hearts in our prayers and thoughts. We remember at the beginning of this week, on December 1st, we honored World AIDS Day, and the reality that every day thousands of people continue to be impacted by HIV. For everything that is a part of our lives, as we work towards peace, fight for justice, work on this planet, find our spirit of compassion. May we be led forward in wonder and hope. So may it be. Amen and blessed be. May we remain seated as we join together in hymn number 18, What Wondrous Love. As we move into the time of the giving and receiving of the offering, may we recall that it is an opportunity every week for us to think about our relationship with all of the gifts that we have been given. Certainly our financial resources, but how we use our time and our affection for greater good. We also are reminded that every week we share part of the plate with a local organization that does important work. And throughout December, most of our services we will share with Room at the Inn. Sponsored by the Sisters of Divine Providence, Room at the Inn provides an emergency shelter and a stabilizing support system to women and families in need in St. Louis County. They seek a collaborative and interfaith approach, allowing congregations and organizations to work together throughout the St. Louis region. And Eliot Chapel has supported Room at the Inn for more than 30 years, and as I've gotten to know you, many of you have told me directly and specifically how important that relationship is to your sense of fulfillment here. So may we find a spirit of deep generosity in this time as an offering is given and received in love. As the greeters come forward with our offering, may we offer our own blessing for these gifts by reading together the words of dedication printed in the order of service. Together we say, "To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are offerings." Thank you, one and all, for your generosity. In preparation for our reflection together this morning, a reading from the Reverend Rebecca Parker, who retired a few years ago from being president of one of our Unitarian Universalist theological schools. She writes this as we move into the heart of the winter season in a reading entitled Winter Solstice. Perhaps for a moment, the keyboards will stop clicking, the wheels stop rolling, the computers desist from computing, and a hush will fall over the city. For an instant, in the stillness, the chiming of the celestial spheres will be heard as Earth hangs poised in the crystalline darkness, and then gracefully tilts. Let there be a season when holiness is heard, and the splendor of living is revealed. Stunned by stillness and beauty, we remember who we are and why we are here. There are inexplicable mysteries. We are not alone. In the universe, there moves a wild one whose gestures alter Earth's axis toward love. In the immense darkness, everything spins with joy. The cosmos enfolds us, and we are caught in a web of stars, cradled in a swaying embrace, rocked by the holy night, babes of the universe. Let this be the time to wake to life, like spring wakes in the moment of winter solstice. Here ends our reading. This is such an important time for us to ponder the theme of this month, wonder, and its close sibling, awe. The University of Michigan psychologist Ethan Kross defines awe as the wonder we feel when we encounter something powerful that we can't easily explain. And Ethan emphasizes that often these things which bring us awe have an element of vastness and complexity, like a starry night sky, or an act of great kindness, or the beauty of something small and intricate. And turning to science, which is one of the things that we do as Unitarian Universalists for wisdom, we have found that by studying the brain, when people are in the presence of awe or wonder, and they measured this by showing them videos that were more awe-inspiring instead of neutral or depressing, what they found is that the brain was different. It decreased the activity in what's called the DMN, or the default mode network, which gets us away from being quite so self-focused and ruminating on everything. And the result is a decrease in that mental chatter that we carry with us all day long. But its benefits go beyond just stress relief. Research has shown that experiencing something bigger than us helps us transcend a frame of reference by expanding our mental models and stimulating new ways of thinking about our connection with all that is. It can increase creativity and innovation. It can facilitate thinking and ethical decision-making. It even can help us build relationships, because even though most of us have feelings of awe or wonder, often in solo times, it draws us out of ourselves and towards others and inspires a sort of pro-social behavior, much like thinking about and experiencing generosity and compassion. So there is a lot that we could benefit from by exploring, by leaning into wonder and awe in this time. Now, last month I invited you to think about the original purpose of all holy days as we move into this month. This month that often has had our holy days moved into a space that robs them of so much deep meaning that is very old and very powerful. And it asks us to engage these holy days with fresh eyes, to try as best we can to move towards the original ideas, the original powerful, primal human urges that made us need to do something, to pray or to sing or to be with each other. And winter and all of the holidays are particularly associated with significant urges, with significant human experiences. If you think about what it was like for most people in winter climates that are stark and cold, winter often would have been a time of struggling to survive. And the original holy days would have held that truth, that it wasn't just about happy, happy, joy, joy, and wonderful lights everywhere. It really began with the truth that many people you love might not survive the winter. And it doesn't have to be the season of winter for us to be in times of great difficulty, long nights where we are seeking hope. And so this idea of wonder is especially important in those times, as well as when we want to celebrate. And it's interesting that the original meaning of the word wonder was used to indicate in Old English everything from miracle to marvel to horror and a monster. Wonder encapsulates and embraces it all. So what is wonder when we are in those long and powerful nights? I go to a modern explorer and thinker of amazing things, Eve Ensler. She is probably most well known for the cultural classic from 1998, The Vagina Monologues. But it was actually, she says, her near-death experience with cancer that she credits as not only one of the hardest, but most creative endeavors she's ever undertaken. At one point, she found herself in the hospital, ravaged by cancer and struggling to survive, and she wrote, "I was too weak to think or write or call or even watch a movie. All I could do was stare at this tree, which was the only thing in my view. And at first, it annoyed me, and I thought I would go mad from boredom." So, in exploring the theme of wonder, this hardly seems to be a setup of an opening story that illustrates life-affirming experiences and that brings us to new places. And Ensler would agree, but she goes on. "But after the first days and many hours of that miserable existence, I began to see the tree. On Tuesday, I meditated on bark. On Friday, the green leaves shimmering in the late afternoon light. For hours, I lost myself, my body, my being dissolved into tree." And she found herself shocked to awaken, sometimes in great pain in the hospital bed, but to look forward to her first sight every morning of the tree. And more to the point, she did not start her experience as a tree agnostic. She referred to herself as an arboreal antagonist. When she left Vermont for New York City, she was happy to leave trees behind. They became powerful symbols for her. She wrote, "They became to mean small town meanness and small minds and isolation and gossip and long freezing winters and endless green swallowing landscapes and skiing co-eds and empty chatter. Trees had everything to do with the bad in life, I was convinced." And she became very successful in her own life in New York City and became more and more estranged from the essence of her life. Her busyness, her schedule, her productivity had become a motivating force, but they slowly alienated her from so much that would help her know more deeply about what she valued most. And so there she was in the hospital, not able to work, not able to do, quote, anything significant. Life itself was inconsequential unless it led to something, she thought. Unless the tree would be wood, would be house, would be table, what value was there to tree? So to actually have to lie in the hospital bed and see tree, enter the tree, to find the green life inherent in the tree, began to open her eyes. Each day it was different as she looked at the tree based on the light or the wind or the rain. The tree became her tonic and a cure. The tree became her guru and her teacher. There was the tree, my tree, she thought. Not that I owned it. I had no desire for that, but it had actually come to be my friend, my point of connection and meditation, my new reason for now to live. My love of green, my appreciation of the tree, the power of the gentle blossoms that began to flower out my window. As we move into the heart of this holiday season, we are called to remember that the real lessons of this time are far deeper and much more profound than most of what we see about this time. And the same is true with the gifts of wonder. It isn't just the way it pulls us away from life, but the way that it invites us into life in a way that is truer and steeped in meaning and connection. That it coaxes a new way of understanding and seeing, sometimes when we least expect it. As Eden Philpotts reminds us, the universe is full of magical things, patiently waiting for our wits to grow sharper. So Ensler found that tree, its clarity and presence that offered her a pathway of exploration and paradoxically an opportunity when she felt there was very little control in her life and the path of her future, a moment to just be and survive. Our task this month as we explore wonder and awe seems so simple, but it is so complex to practice because we tend so often to be unaware. Joy Garrison Wasson taught English in Muncie, Indiana for over 30 years. And when she died on October 15, 2009, right before that, she wrote a series of letters about things that she remembered from her teaching. In all of her teaching years, she held this one day. One day she was asking her students to make a list of what they thought were the 7 wonders of the world. And there was a lot of disagreement, but they began to write their lists and turn them in. And she noticed things like the Egyptian Great Pyramids and the Grand Canyon and the Empire State Building. And someone actually wrote Walmart in their list. But she noticed that one of her very shy students just seemed to be sitting there staring at her paper. And so she went over and said quietly, "Are you having some trouble with your list?" And the girl replied, "Well, yes, a little, because I can't make up my mind. There are so many possibilities." And so she said, "Well, why don't you tell me some of what you're thinking about and maybe we can work it out together?" And she said, "Well, here is the list of the 7 wonders I've come up with so far. To see, to hear, to touch, to feel, to taste, to smell, to laugh, to love." Miss Wasson reflected when she heard that list that she had never considered any of those things in her list of wonders. And all those years later, it changed how she looked at the world. What pathways this month might help us connect a little more deeply with this incredible gift that we are given? Our lives, our connection, the truth of the world around us, especially in difficult and complicated times. Perhaps you will turn to the path of the wonder of love and know that it is by no means an easy and simple and one-sided path. In Rebecca Parker's Winter Solstice, she reminds us that there is a season of holiness that is heard in the splendor of living as revealed. We are not alone. In some ways, that relational aspect is a component of all sources of wonder. They don't exist by themselves, but call us out of ourselves to see the world as it really is. As Mary Oliver points out as she is thinking about the mysteries of life, that we are called to see the company around us always, but especially those who refuse to be cynical and removed, but rather turn their hearts to love. We might find it in the ways that we seek to do good in the world and find wonder in that, or to work for justice, or to be compassionate. And Amy Netsukamatil, the writer, has long been a proponent for wonder. And in her book of essays entitled The World of Wonders, in praise of fireflies, whale sharks, and other astonishments, she writes, "If you open yourself to wonder and learn about a plant or animal or a human as well that you didn't know before, like if you knew their names, knew the tender way that they took care of their tiny eggs in their very own mouths, like the jawfish, or knew how they used the moon and the stars to figure out how to fly home like indigo buntings, knew how they pulled a blanket up to their son's chin on a cold night, I imagine it would be harder. How could you still want to make violence on them? Wonder is nurtured in our deep connections. It begins with what is deep inside of each of us, and then invites us to understand how that inner world impacts what we allow ourselves to see and do. What is it that this season will call from you? And how will you see the world around you? It was a day very much like this, a cold December day that I started out from my hotel room in San Francisco. I was there because my partner was presenting a paper and I had more free time. And so I was going to make my way to some of my favorite things in the city, like Coit Tower and Telegraph Hill. And I was right downtown and heading into the morning bustle of the on-foot rush hour, when I stood at a stoplight, and right in front of me was like a classic urban, probably gay man in San Francisco who was immaculately dressed, and even his dog was immaculately matching his outfit. Same color scheme and everything. This very regal-looking German Shepherd. And I couldn't help but think, man, I will never be that cool in my life. When I noticed this movement out of my side vision that sort of darted next to me and then took a step back, and I very slowly looked over, and it was a young woman. A woman who really had to be the perfect counterbalance to the coolness of the man in front of me. She was dressed in clothes from the 70s, and it was about 30 years after the 70s. And she looked like she was very agitated and afraid. And she was looking at the dog, and for a moment I thought, well, she must be afraid of dogs. But then I looked closer, and I noticed that she had a cochlear implant. And I realized that she probably was deaf. It took me back to when I did an internship years ago at the North Carolina School for the Deaf. And this one young man who seemed very alienated from the world, and his teacher told me that he had been abused as a child, was profoundly deaf, and was never really able to do well with sign language. And he struggled with such fear in his life. I wondered if maybe some of that was true for her. But I also noticed she began to slowly step forward, very carefully towards the man and his dog. And I found myself somehow fascinated by this little vignette in front of me. She stepped forward and she looked at the man and she looked at the dog, and then she looked at the man again, and then very carefully she knelt next to the dog. And she held her hand out very cautiously at first to let him sniff, and of course he did. And then she looked at him again, and then at the man, and the man did nothing to indicate anything. And then she just gently leaned forward, and the dog did what dogs do. He began to slather her face with big, loving, kissing licks that were audible about 5 feet away. They were just so loud and rapturous. And this young woman put her head back, and she let out this unabashed giggle that sounded like a 5-year-old that was screaming on a swing set. And for a few seconds, there was this amazing love fest in front of me where she was nuzzling into the dog and the dog was nuzzling back, and there was kisses and licks and paws, and then the light turned green. And I just found my heart sinking for a moment. But I noticed the man looked at the light and looked at the woman and his dog, and he just stood there, and the light turned red, and for another cycle, the two of them just were so in love. Perfect, beautiful, joyful love. And the two of us watched it. I was so taken with it that I wanted to hold my arms out to protect the two of them from the rest of the world crowding past. Do you not realize what's happening in front of you right now? And then the light turned green again. And the man and the woman just very quickly exchanged gentle, thoughtful glances, and they went on their way. But I couldn't move. I was still thinking about what I just saw. And I began to think, maybe this is how we participate in the good in the world. All of it. Maybe sometimes we are the woman who realizes how desperately we need some connection, some affection, and we step into it even though it's a risk. Maybe sometimes we are lucky enough to be the dog who just by being ourselves may offer a gift of wonder and love when we least expect it. Maybe sometimes we are the man who just by not stopping a wonderful moment allows greater good to happen in the world. Or maybe we are just given the gift to witness wonder, to remember it all these years later, and let it remind us to stop and pay attention. Whatever way you are called to wonder this day, this moment, this month, may it call you well and give you life. I look forward to the ways we explore this month, the power of wonder and awe. May it be so. Amen. And blessed be. Let's rise in the ways that we do and let's sing together, shall we? Let's do 298. Wake now, my senses.
Feel the deep power of
as we prepare to leave this place, may we go forth with a renewed dedication to see our life as it really is, to see each other, and to reach out in all the ways we can in love and compassion. We extinguish this chalice, but we cannot extinguish the light of wisdom. We will not extinguish the warmth of human compassion and connection. We will live into the fire of our commitment to lives that matter. All these things we will live until we come together again. I invite you to take your seat and receive a final gift this morning of music.
Thank you so much for being here today. We have been blessed by each other's presence. Go in peace.